Hello everyone, and welcome to week 2. It's a big week for the Vikings, and for me. For the Vikings, they're facing their biggest division rival and closest neighbor, the Green Bay Packers. For me, I'll be doing a game preview that includes the Green Bay Packers, a team that most of my friends and family support. Also for me, because there's a little more pressure on me this week. Before I get started on either the beer or the game, I wanted to say thank you to all of you who commented on last week's video or who texted me and said that you enjoyed it. I'll be honest, I was really close to not putting it up at all. I really don't know what I'm doing, and the sheer modern day terror of putting up a video that no one watched was very powerful. I want to thank you all for proving me wrong and surprising me, and it made my Monday to hear such positive things about a stupid video that I made. That being said, this week's beer is Viking Lager. The Viking brewery produces mainly lagers, meaning that the yeast works under cold temperatures, which is fitting because the brewery is located in Akureyri, Iceland, just south of the Arctic Circle. It's a frozen tundra of sorts, very similar in many ways to the reputation that Lambeau Field has built for itself. That, and look what color the can is. Huh? 2 weeks in a row. Perfect. Perfect match. Let's crack it open. Got the little glass again this week for all of you to see. And even as I'm pouring it, I can smell. It smells kind of sweet and yeasty, I guess, a little bit. Look, I mean, I think it's even lighter than last week's. That's really impressive. They describe it on the can as being a light and mild beer with less bitterness than some of their other lagers. Yeah, this is really good. Very smooth, very light. They also have a light beer, like their own specific light beer, so I'm really curious to get into that one. A little bit of a hoppy aftertaste, but even then it's a very faint. It's a good beer. Okay, I'll pump the brakes here. As a long-suffering Vikings fan, no team gives me more heart palpitations than the Green Bay Packers. Now, I know that the Packers had a very dark stretch of about 20 to 25 years where they also had a hard time winning football games. But for most of my football watching life, I've watched Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers pull miracles out of their yellow-clad rectums with ridiculous regularity. Which, you know what? Let's address the elephant in the room. We've all watched Rodgers rocket multiple Hail Marys successfully in one season and lead improbable comebacks, but what he pulled off against the Bears last week ought to have every Packer fan praying that Rodgers tries to play football for another 2 decades. I mean, he left the game on a cart, and after watching poor Deshaun Kaiser get eaten alive out there, he came running back out onto the field like the Ultimate Warrior had one bad leg and just devastated the Bears. I want to make it clear in no uncertain terms that I think Aaron Rodgers might be the best ever to play the game. I could make an entirely separate video breaking down the unnatural talent that man possesses, but I don't think there's any denying that he has a performance-enhancing substance in his body. Iron. Specifically iron in this form. Whoop! Lodged securely in his colon. I mean, you gotta take it as a suppository, obviously. So, the fact that the team doctors had enough painkillers, and the fact that Fuller dropped that interception that hit him square, and the fact that Randall Cobb was able to do his greased up naked deaf guy impression.
Oh, this is my favorite event. Catch the greased up deaf guy. Goal! You're never gonna catch me. You're wasting your time. Forget about it. Go do something else.
I mean, that all stacks up to yet another lucky break for the Packers. Also lucky that he didn't destroy his knee. I mean, how many people get carted off the field and return in the same game? What I'm driving is that the Packers have a truly all-time great at the quarterback position, and that they also get lucky, which is why it's so hard for me to break down today's game. I believe this might be the most well-rounded, talented team the Vikings have had in my lifetime, and every objective assessment says the Vikings should win this game. The Packers secondary has improved drastically. They added to it in the offseason through the draft and by bringing back Tramon Williams. Clinton Dix looks capable, but I still think Diggs and Thielen outclass them. I also like Rudolph's matchup against the Green Bay linebacker core. After all, Clay Matthews is no spring chicken. Dalvin Cook looked really good for the Vikings last week too, both in the passing game and the running game. Now, Mike Daniels continues to be kind of a terrifying machine on the Packers' defensive line, but if you can swing Dalvin Cook out of the backfield and get him, some short passes, he'll be lining up against linebackers most likely. Meanwhile, on the Packers' offensive side of the ball, Devontae Adams has, has proven to be reliable. He does have an injury and was questionable last time I checked, but I don't know if he's going to play or not. Randall Cobb's looking like he might bounce back from his injury-laden season. It's one game, but he looked good in that scrambly run. And Geronimo Allison looks like he's on track to live up to the hype that he created last preseason and then kind of didn't really do anything. That bomb was just... To me, what it all comes down to is whether or not the Vikings defense is up to handling the gimpy Aaron Rodgers in his lair, in the illustrious Lambeau. If this game were in Minnesota, I would feel fairly comfortable projecting the Vikings, but it's really hard to win at Lambeau. Ask the Bears. They had a 20-point lead and knocked their opponent's quarterback out of the game and still lost in heartbreaking fashion. I say all of this to explain my trepidation. I've always joked that the Vikings wait until I believe in them to sucker punch me in the back of the heart. So I'm almost terrified that if I speak it aloud, they'll implode again. But I have to say it. I think the Vikings win by 10. I think their defense is still top of the league or right up there. And Aaron Rodgers is hurt, and his scrambling ability is what keeps the plays alive and allows him to throw those deep bombs. Either they'll win by 10 or lose in spectacular fashion, and I will still be hungover for next week's video. We'll see. Until next week, skål filether. Go Vikings. Paper towels. Rookie mistake. Whoop. Heart palpitations. Then performance and has. But I don't think that there's any... Oh, I've done this whole thing with the fan on, haven't I?